Hello, everybody. Welcome to Learning Forward, my weekly show where I travel across the world in search of passionate educators. Today, I have with me a teaching professor in graduate programs in education, including Doctor of Education programs. His primary interest lies in design, development, proliferation of learners centered and agency focused schools and schooling, entrepreneurship. He looks to support change agents and follows change agents in their work in terms of educational ecosystems. His areas lie in entrepreneurship, experiential learning, school design, and networking. He is causing a revolution in education. I have with me today none other than Chris Unger. Chris, who is as much a change maker as the world is changing. He looks at it socially, economically, politically, and technologically. And he wants to find out what transformation teachers and learners need to adapt with and where schooling is going. Welcome to my show, Chris. Chris, share with us, where is your passion for education taking you?
Well, thanks, Sandeep, and I really appreciate being on this podcast. It's amazing what you have done and what you are doing, and again, greatly appreciate being on. Very kind of you to say everything you said, but I guess it's all true. I guess that also is an indication that I am indeed a very old man at the age of 60, having been in education for 36 years now and having done what I can to move the needle, I guess. My passion, education. I'm going to make it very simple. And Ken Robinson has made note of this before, and we continue to do this. Is as far as we think we're moved in education and our society and our humanity around the world here and going into the year 2021, the reality is that despite our understanding of how learning actually happens in the real world, we continue to build factories and factory systems and hire teachers to be factory workers to plug kids through a system where you see them as having deficits of knowledge and skills and abilities. And instead of having factories, as you well know, Sandeep, with your work and your school and what you're trying to create, what we need is these incredible gardens of growth around the world. And I don't mean big farms where we're going acres of corn or other soybeans. I'm talking about small gardens where there are gardeners who are paying attention to the young shoots that are coming out of the ground and growing and finding out what is the right amount of sunlight and the right amount of water, and how do I make sure that I'm providing the kind of richness of soil and the light that really allows that individual plant to grow in their own well-being, whether they become a tomato, a sunflower, a basil, and whatever it might be. We're not gardening. We're not allowing youth to flourish, I guess. And I think that's where I land right now is, why do we continue to perpetuate this factory model of education? Why are our policies and funding structures and expectations, why do we continue to do something that's so against the grain in terms of how we know actual learning goes? And not just learning, but, ultimately, what is the outcome of learning? And I think a good friend of mine, Kath Fraze, and others that I'm connected with, we really want youth to kind of grow up to be agentic and see the possibilities in their lives. And in some ways, the most important thing is, how do we support this individual to realize who they are, to become actualized, if I can use that word, and pursue the life they want to live? And how do they do that in such a way that they can also contribute back to our humanity, which is greatly needed, I think, in our world and has always been needed, is how do we turn the focus around assisting and supporting every youth to sort of realize their interests and passions, pursue the lives they want to live, and then give back to the world so that we can all have a better humanity, which again, I would argue is greatly needed right now. So, rather than plugging kids in through these factory models where they're supposed to remember or memorize history and take biology and the disconnected content where the kids are sitting in desks and rows and wondering, why am I learning this? Follow the passion and interest of this. The kids know. So that's what I'm all about. And I'm trying to change the entire ecosystem. Because if you don't change the ecosystem, we're not creating gardens anymore. And you have to still focus on the ecosystem. And I guess one last thing I would say, Sandeep, is as much as I worry about the youth, I also worry about the adults. And the adults are also part of this ecosystem, and they're hired as factory workers, and they don't have much wiggle room to actually support and assist youth to flourish. So the whole thing needs to be turned upside down, and that's why I'm into entrepreneurial activity and supporting people like yourself, Sandeep, and other schools who are basically have new visions of possibility for schools and school environments and learning communities so that youth can flourish.
Please stay with us. We will be back after a quick commercial break. Thank you, Chris. I really like this idea of a garden growing and how tender shoots grow up into large trees and how the large trees then offer succor to the world. It's a great example. I also appreciate your thought of the factory system which needs to change. Now, if you were to give one policy prescription which would make a difference across the world, I'm asking you across the world, give me one policy prescription which we should mandate and champion.
Well, I would incentivize, which is an important thing. Right now, everything is organized around penalization. If you don't do this, if you don't do that, if you don't do this, you lose money. You're beholden to standardized scores. But if you incentivize small groups of people, not unlike yourself in your own community and the communities you're trying to support in this Sandeep around the world, you incentivize. You say, "Hey, you have an idea for a garden. It sounds really great. It sounds, if I can understand how you're designing it in your mind, how you're going to assist and support individual youth to flourish and grow. We're going to support you with some finances and additional support and relationships and connections with others to help you create this garden." And I think there are two things that are really important about this. One is giving them the space to create this garden, but this is why I'm so into networks. And, Tom Vander Ark and Lydia Dobbins have talked about this at length. The importance of networks is that I might, for myself, want to create a garden for my own grandson who's just turned 7 lives with me. So I'm seeing this all again, secondhand, or firsthand, but second generation with my own kids. The reality is there are people all around the world that have created these amazing and beautiful gardens. And so the policy that I would create is create the space to allow people to envision what garden they want to grow, but connect them with other educators around the world who have already been able to create these amazing and beautiful gardens and support the development of relationships so that as a person who wants to grow a garden, but who has never gardened before, who has never actually, planted the seeds and watered them, and has gone through the years of experience on how to make a garden, help a garden to flourish, connect them with these other networks of individuals who have created these beautiful gardens, so that they can also learn from them and be supported by them and be mentored by them. And that's one of the things that's really a shortcoming here, even with charter schools in the United States and others. Everybody's building gardens out of what they know. But the reality is there are these beautiful gardens all over the world, and most people don't know of them. So I would create this ultra network of flourishing gardens and make sure that people who want to create their own garden, their own locality for their own youth and their children, they can be part of this system and network to kind of learn from one another as they build and grow these gardens. And I guess that would be something that I would really, really, really want to make sure is in the policy.
Thank you, Chris. The relationship which we have established is actually a true example of the bond between the space and the connection. You've talked of networks, you have talked of spaces. And how do you connect networks with spaces? It's by building relationship. I hope I'm good in my understanding in such simplicity.
Completely around relationships. Rather than transactional environments, we want transformational environments. We want to build relationships with one another so that we can learn from and with one another, and we can all grow these incredible gardens around the world, which you're working on, Sandeep, I know very, very heartily, which I completely commend. And we just got to figure out a way to create these beautiful gardens around the world and showcase them to these other policy environments and these systems that we have in place. And we got to help policymakers and other educators and government agents to realize that there's another way we can support youth to thrive, and we'll make a better world because of it, which is greatly needed. So we need more of these gardens. Let's let these gardens flourish. Let's connect people through relationships. Let's create these networks, and let's get rid of the old factories. Let's tear them down and let's build these beautiful floral gardens all over so that we can have a better world.
It's wonderful meeting a revolutionary, and may the revolution in education actually happen in our living lives. Thank you so much for being with us yet again.
I appreciate Sandeep, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. Wonderful. And anybody can reach out to me. Speaking of relationships, I'm always happy to connect with anybody to help these gardens grow.